Okay, great. Welcome to the lesson. We're going to be talking about Out of the Dust by Karen Hess and verse novels. But first, I want to sing a song for you. And this was written by Woody Guthrie in 1940, and it was written in and about the time of the Dust Bowl and the Great Depression. So afterwards, I want your first impressions. But I'm going to sing it for you right now, okay? I just blowed in, I got them Dust Bowl blues. I just blowed in, I got them Dust Bowl blues. I just blowed in, I'll blow back out again. I guess you've heard about every type of blues. I guess you've heard about every type of blues. But when the dust gets high, you can't even see the sky. And I blowed back in, and I'll soon blow out again. So, what do you think the character in that song is talking about?
I think he's a type of traveler who has some connection to the Dust Bowl, whether he's from there or is going there and passing through.
Totally, completely. He's kind of a nomadic character. He doesn't really have a lot of static stability in his life. So what is the Dust Bowl then?
The Dust Bowl is an area in the Midwest where the land wasn't tillable, or it was being tilled too much, and then it wasn't able to produce crops, so huge clouds of dust would come in and just destroy entire towns.
Right, exactly. So the crops would be planted too often in the same fields.
Yes.
And it would kind of deprive the field of nutrients, and so these huge clouds of dust would kick up, and they would roll across the entire Midwest and West. And this was a huge problem for a lot of people economically, because that's how they were making their income, by farming and through agriculture. And this also kind of came in conjunction with the Great Depression, and that was a time of great kind of economic problems for the entire country. So those farmers in the West who were living in the Dust Bowl, just they just didn't have a lot to work with, and so that kind of ties in with the theme of the novel. It informs kind of the context of Billy Joe's life. So what is a verse novel? Do you know what a verse novel is?
A verse novel is a type of poetry where it doesn't have to rhyme and the stanzas can be any length.
Right, exactly. The stanzas can be any length. They don't have to rhyme. It's not like a sonnet or a soliloquy. It's nothing kind of like Shakespeare, although Shakespeare did write some verse. But yeah, exactly. So it's almost prose, except that it's written in stanza form. There doesn't have to be a meter. There doesn't have to be a rhythm. So all kind of breaks in stanza is up to the author. So it's a very kind of subjective writing style. So one of those, one great example of verse poetry, or verse novel actually, is John Milton's Paradise Lost. So just so you know, that was written in 1667. So that's kind of an example of a non-contemporary verse novel. So just so you know, like the verse novel has a tradition. It has a long storied kind of history. It is already an established form. So Karen Hess, the author of Out of the Dust, is writing to this form. So are you good so far? Do you have any questions?
I'm good.
Cool. So we'll start with an analysis of each character, because I think that's really important when you're looking at actions and thoughts of each novel you read. You want to look at the characters first. So can you tell me a little bit about Billy Joe? What do you think Billy Joe feels about the incident with her mother?
I think Billy Joe feels personally responsible for it.
Right.
Yeah, and she feels guilty about it.
I think so too. And she herself was hurt in the same kind of event. She accidentally threw kerosene on her mother, and she also burned herself. So can you tell me why that personally hurt her so much, her burning her hands?
It hurt her because she couldn't play piano anymore.
Right, and what is the piano to Billy Joe?
It's a way out of the Dust Bowl, and it's a way that she escapes from everything that's going on in her life.
Right, so it's kind of almost an emotional outlet.
Yeah.
Right. And then let's move on to Dad then. So what does Daddy feel about Billy Joe?
Daddy feels a lot of grief over the mother's death, and he knows that Billy Joe is grieving too, but he can't reach out to her because she's pushing him away.
Right, and an important thing to note is that she doesn't call him father or dad or daddy until the very end of the novel, so there's obviously some tension there. And then Louise is kind of the last character that comes into the story. So what is Louise's character like? She's the stepmother, but she's not really kind of like the Cinderella stepmother. What do you think about that?
I think she defies both stereotypes about stepmothers. Either they're evil or they're a perfect mom replacement.
Yeah.
And I think she respects the family as it was.
Right, so she comes into this kind of like family unit, and she inserts herself, but not in kind of a cruel way, as is like the trope, the tradition or stereotype for stepmothers. Right. So then the last thing you want to do when you read a novel is ask yourself 3 questions. So first question you want to ask yourself, whose novel is it? Who's the main character? Who's narrating the novel? And or kind of who has the biggest character arc?
Well, I'd say the answer to all 3 of those is Billie Jo, because she's narrating, she's the main character, and she has the arc where she leaves the Dust Bowl and then comes back.
Exactly. And then what is the main tension or conflict in the novel?
The main tension would be between Billie Jo and her father, because they can't reconcile their own grief with other persons.
Exactly. And then the last question you always want to ask yourself is, what happens in the end of the novel to resolve that conflict or tension?
Well, there's a few resolutions. Billie Jo comes back, she learns to play, or she starts playing the piano again, and also the father ends up marrying Louise.
Yeah, so there's like a marriage at the end of the book, which is kind of traditional, almost in kind of Jane Austen style. Somebody has to get married at the end. But also the kind of most important thing that happens, I think, is that the dust in the Dust Bowl settles, right? So not only does kind of the dust metaphorically settle in their relationship, but also this tide of economic prosperity starts kind of slowly washing back in. And it's raining, the crops are growing. The family can finally kind of get back on their feet again. So the very, very last question you want to ask yourself, and I ask myself this all the time, is what does the title mean? So Out of the Dust, what does that mean to you?
I think it means that at the end of the novel, they get out of the dust because the dust settles, and in a way that symbolizes them rising up out of their situation, because the dust is so prevalent in their lives that it needs to go away before anything happens.
Exactly. So it kind of is a title that encapsulates her, like Billie Jo's entire kind of journey to get out of the dust and then to go back in and then to realize that the dust is kind of gone on its own.
Yeah.
Exactly. So great lesson. Do you have any other questions for me?
No, I'm fine, thanks.
Okay, great. Feel free to come up to me after class and ask me anything or give me your own opinions. I'm so glad you had some great answers today, and I guess I'll see you later. Thank you so much.
Thanks.